There's this great scene that I love in Lord of the Rings that's really easy to overlook. Sam and Frodo have been walking on foot for almost a year through an increasingly desolate wasteland. Their only guide is this guy, and they don't know if they can actually trust him. The odds that they'll be able to accomplish what they came all this way to do are slim to none. It doesn't seem like their situation could be any worse. Then Sam drops this bombshell.
I don't think there will be a return journey, Mr. Frodo.
They won't be going home. There's simply not enough food for them to survive the return journey. They don't linger on this for too long, but to me, that's just so emotionally powerful. The heroes know that even in the best circumstances they could ever hope for, even if they succeed beyond all odds, defeat this civilization-ending evil, and save the world for everyone else, they still won't get to go back home and be part of the world they saved. It's a kind of moment you don't really get in modern D&D. Lord of the Rings is an incredible epic fantasy adventure for a lot of reasons that D&D does really well. Wizards, magic, monsters, and big fight sequences. The one thing that really holds D&D back from feeling like Lord of the Rings is D&D does not have good concrete rules for traveling. If you want to make a campaign based around having an epic adventure, I feel like you've got to get traveling right. The way I see most DMs handle travel is they don't. You travel from one city to another in a single sentence. Maybe you'll fight a troll or two on the way there, but that's about as much focus as travel will usually get in an entire campaign. People think of counting rations and encounter tables as just kind of unnecessary bookwork. And if you're playing a game that isn't about wilderness exploration and long epic journeys, yeah, it kind of is. If you want to tell a story about fantasy politics, where at most you might travel from one city to another and maybe back again, skipping travel is probably the best way to handle it. Obviously, that's not the genre of D&D I'm looking for here. I want to evoke the feeling of Aragorn and the hobbits desperately rushing to Rivendell while being chased by the Nazgul. Or something like the feeling you get in Resident Evil games when you're running low on bullets and suddenly you see the big zombie sprinting at you. Or worse, the big lady. If that sounds like a terrible time to you, don't worry about it. It's not for everyone. But if that sparks some curiosity in you, stick around. These are meant to be robust but simple rules that make it easy and fun to play. There are a lot of videos on YouTube that have general advice about exploration, but nothing that was concrete enough for me. DMing a game is already a lot of work. I want to help take some of that work off of you, the DM. There probably are other game systems dedicated just to wilderness exploration, but I can't imagine they do those other things like monsters and battles as well as D&D or Pathfinder might. These rules are more like a plug-in to D&D itself. Think of it like a Game Shark you can just slap in that bad boy and change the genre. You'll still be rolling d20s, using D&D skills, all that good stuff. The first thing we need is, of course, a map. This is what allows players to make decisions that affect the course of the journey. Most people use a hex map. I think square tiles work just as well. Every day the party can move 2 hex tiles at a normal walking speed. That means each tile is about 10 miles. For every tile the party goes through, they risk an encounter. I'll explain how that works in just a sec. If they want, the party can rush to move 3 tiles instead of 2 in one day. But they risk taking a level of exhaustion. Speaking of exhaustion, I strongly recommend using the Unearthed Arcana rules for exhaustion, where every level of exhaustion gives you -1 to all d20 rolls, until you hit level 10 and die. It's a lot more forgiving and easier to remember than the rules in the player's handbook. In this game, resources are scarce, and we're going to be tracking rations. For every day that passes, each party member must consume 1 day's rations. If they don't, they make a fortitude save to avoid exhaustion. What's a fortitude save? Well, I'm glad you asked. Fortitude saves are just a type of constitution saving throw, the same way concentration checks are a special type of saving throw, even though they're called checks for some reason. Fortitude is basically your character's ability to resist the fatiguing effects of constant travel. Failing a fortitude save always gives your character 1 level of exhaustion. This is the central thing to manage in this kind of campaign. Can we risk another level of exhaustion before storming these goblin caves? Or should we cut our losses and fight the goblins next time? Even if you pass your save, you're not completely off the hook. Fortitude saves all start off with a DC 10, but every time you pass a Fortitude save, the DC of your next save is increased by 2. You can reduce your exhaustion level and lower your Fortitude DC by 1 stage each every time you take a long rest. I've made a simple printout to help players track their exhaustion and Fortitude levels. Nothing fancy, but it can go on the back of your character sheet or just print out for everyone. There's a link in the description. So does this sound interesting yet? No, not really. You don't have to spare my feelings. What we need now is something for the characters to do. Player engagement. The Traveling Day has 3 parts: a travel section, setup section, and a rest section. For each section, players get to choose a role. During each traveling section, each party member with a role makes a skill check against the DC of the map tile they're traveling through. You don't have to have any of this memorized, by the way. There's a party roll cheat sheet for DMs and players, also in the description. The roles for traveling are: number 1, the guide. Whether they're tracking other creatures, using a map, or just roughing it, it's the guide's job to make sure the party doesn't get lost. This player makes a survival check to take the party where they want to go. On a successful check, the party moves in the right direction. On a failed check, the party gets lost and cannot move. If the guide fails their check by 5 or more, the party goes the wrong way. Move the party 1 square in a random direction. The Scout. This player roams ahead of the party to watch out for danger. The Scout must make either a stealth or perception check for each tile the party passes through. If they succeed, the party successfully avoids all dangers. If they fail, well, then there's going to be an encounter. If the Scout fails by 5 or more, then the party is surprised by whatever encounter they find. The Map. The mapper makes a history or survival check. On a success, other party members make their roll checks with advantage when they come back through the square. This is a permanent effect, so it's very good if you have 1 or 2 safe spots that you have to keep coming back to in an exploration campaign like, say, Tomb of Annihilation. If they roll higher, you could also give them any info that might be important, such as the DC of the square, common enemies you might find there. You can just write this stuff directly on the party's map. Once the traveling day and any encounters from it are resolved, there's a setup phase, where characters find a suitable camp spot, hunt and gather, set up tents, make a fire, cook dinner. There's no hot pockets or microwaves in this world. For the setup phase, every member of the party is once again going to choose new roles. The first role is Setup. This player is going to make a stealth or survival check to find a safe campsite and set it up so it won't be easily discovered. On a success, there's no encounters for the night. The next party role is Foraging. This player can make a survival or a nature check to gather supplies like food, water, and firewood. On a success, the party expends 1 less rations for the day. If the forager rolls 5 higher than the tile's DC, the party saves an additional day's rations. If the forager rolls 5 or lower than the tile's DC, they've brought something back that wasn't as edible as they thought. Each party member must make a Fortitude save against exhaustion. The last role in this phase is the Cook. This player is going to make a Cook's Utensils check. I'm not 100% sure what ability score they intended that to be associated with. You can do what you want, but the simplest solution is just to not use any ability score. You're either proficient with them or not. Or maybe you have expertise. Or you're a bard and you can add half your proficiency bonus. But that's it. If the cook succeeds their check, they've made a hearty meal that rejuvenates the party. Each party member immediately gains 1 expended hit dice. If they succeed by 5 or more, each party member gains an additional hit dice. If they fail by 5 or more, they've ruined the meal. Each party member has to expend twice as many rations as normal. The last portion of the day is rest. There's only 1 roll, and it's Watch. The player on Watch must make a perception check to avoid the party being ambushed. Most player characters need 6 hours of sleep to benefit from a long rest, so you'll need 4 different shifts for this role, unless you've got characters that don't need as much sleep, like elves or warforged. If the setup character got a good roll on their skill check, and you know there's not going to be any encounters for the night, it's perfectly fine to just skip this phase entirely. Now that we've got some solid rules for traveling, we do need to tinker with the rules of D&D just a little bit. I want to avoid homebrewing as much as possible, but there are a few things in base D&D that need to change to make traveling a meaningful experience. The first issue, and probably the most well-known, is Goodberry. Rules as written, this first level spell replaces 10 days worth of rations, in addition to doing decent healing. The solution is pretty simple though. One casting of Goodberry now can feed one medium-sized creature for a day. Instead of replacing 10 days rations, it now only replaces 1. That means to feed a party of 4, you would have to spend 4 first level spell slots. That's a pretty big cost, even at higher tiers of play. The second problem is Leomund's Tiny Hut. Tiny Hut is a 3rd level spell that completely removes any chance of night encounters. The kicker is that it's a ritual spell, so it doesn't even cost spell slots to cast. There are 2 options to fix this. One, we can simply remove the ritual tag from the spell, making it cost a valuable 3rd level spell slot. The second option is to give the hut about 100 HP or so. Now the party can't be ambushed, but an intelligent creature who finds the camp can still engage the party after a few rounds of whittling down the hut's HP. The last issue we need to resolve is probably the most problematic. This might be controversial, but long rests are a problem in D&D. Not just in this genre of D&D, but in all of D&D. The game is designed around 6 to 8 encounters a day. I've never met anyone in my entire life who actually plays that many encounters in a day. Not even close. 8 encounters in a day just sounds tedious. Instead, you'll usually get 1 or 2 super deadly encounters. Then, after spending the day getting stabbed by orcs, pummeled by trolls,
shot, poisoned, frozen, hung, electrocuted, and burned,
the party just takes 6 hours of sleep and wakes up fully restored, ready to do it all again. This undermines the core tension that D&D was originally built around. The idea that you need to manage your resources wisely or you might run out at the worst possible time. The fix for this is actually an official optional rule in the Dungeon Master's Guide. Whenever you take a long rest, you don't regain any HP. Instead, you use hit dice to heal, the same way you would on a short rest. You still regain everything else, spell slots, class features, hit dice, just not hit points. The exception to this is when players take a long rest in a safe haven like a town or city. These safe havens are also the only place a party can level up. Hi players, Future Jake here. If your DM sent you this is the point in the video where you should stop watching. Unless they gave you permission, in which case, go ahead, I guess. I'm going to do a quick look at how one might go about making a campaign with these rules. I don't want this video to get too long, but I do think learning how to make an adventure is just as important as the rules themselves. If people seem interested, I'll do a whole video dedicated just to making a map and a campaign to go with it. For now though, we'll start with a hometown. This is a safe haven, capital, where the players can take a proper long rest without having to worry about being attacked in their sleep. At worst, the players might get into a tavern brawl with drunkards or other adventurers, but outside of edge cases, the players should never be worried about dying once they've made it to a safe haven. This is a game about wilderness exploration, not city shenanigans. They can also buy rations and other supplies while they're here, like mounts, weapons, and armor, anything in the player's handbook, really. Now let's add a short-term objective, something the party is trying to find. That's going to be this Kuotoa Den. I think I'm pronouncing that right? Kuotoa. Those guys have been raiding farms on the outskirts of this main town for a while. In response, the town's knight or mayor or whatever has issued a bounty of 4 silver pieces per Kuotoa head. That's about $40 each if you imagine 1 copper piece is the equivalent to $1, which I do. The Kuotoa crossed a line yesterday when they kidnapped the 8-year-old daughter of 2 of these farmers. She's not actually in any danger. In fact, the Kuotoa are going to worship her as a god, but the townspeople don't know that. The family has posted a reward of 89 silver pieces, their life savings, for the safe return of their only child. Quick note, this kind of game works better with less treasure than I think most tables are probably used to. It kind of makes money feel meaningless when treasure is as available as it is at most tables. It isn't such a big problem in other genres of D&D, but it really doesn't work well for this one. For reference, I'd recommend most enemies in this low-level adventure should have somewhere between 10 to 20 copper pieces worth of loot on them. You could also start them with less gold than normal if you've got a hardcore group. We'll put their objective here, 5 days away from the city. This one is going to be hidden, so the players don't actually know where it is, but we will give them some idea. People in town that they talk to know that the Kuo-toa are coming somewhere in this southwest direction. They'll have to search one tile after another until they find it. Every tile north of this line is going to have a DC of 13. That gives low-level players with proficiency in a skill about 50% to 60% chance of passing their skill checks while traveling. That averages out to about 1.5 encounters per day. Anything south of this line has a DC of 15 and involves more difficult encounters, so players should probably stay close to the town while they're at low levels. Now all we need is to make some encounters for them. I don't really recommend using encounter tables except as a backup, but if you do want to roll random encounters, I suggest rolling the encounters before the session starts. That way you're not scrambling to figure out the encounter right in the middle of the game. There's always some fear that the players will do something unexpected and ruin the encounters you planned for this session. Random encounter tables are a nice backup to have for that, but you can also just ask the players at the end of each session what they plan to do to help you prepare. This first encounter occurs during the traveling phase. The party stumbles upon a group of hunters who have just been ambushed by goblins. There are a number of goblins equal to the number of party members plus the party's level. If the party can defeat the goblins before all of the hunters are dead, the hunters who survive will give you a discount on the rations they sell at their trading post back at the city. Now let's make an encounter that can occur both day and night. This one's simple, it's just a brown bear. But this encounter works differently depending on whether it's day or night. At night, the bear wanders into camp following the smell of your cooking. If the party remains very still or offers up their food, she'll snatch all the supplies she can like Yogi Bear and take it back to her cubs for dinner. If the party decides to fight her, she'll run away after reaching about half HP. If she gets away with stealing their food, she'll come back for more easy food every single night until the players confront her. During the day, you'll encounter her wandering around with her cubs. Being a literal mama bear, she'll run right at the party and fight to the death to protect her kids. Last thing I want to look at is fleshing out the Kuo-toa den a little bit. This is just going to be a little mini dungeon, since the travel rules make the wilderness act almost like a drawn-out dungeon. So think of this as like the final boss of that dungeon. The first encounter is at the entrance, where 2 Kuo-toa stand guard. If the party gets the drop on them and gets good rolls, this encounter will be over very quickly. If the 2 guards survive the first round, however, they'll call for backup, and the Kuo-toa in the next room will come out and join them, making the fight much more difficult. The first room inside the cave has Kuo-toa equal to 4 plus the party's level. And then this final room has 4 Kuo-toa and 1 Kuo-toa priest. Unlike most of the encounters we've discussed so far, this one is a fight to the death. The Kuo-toa have had their home invaded and are backed into a corner, plus they're defending their new child god, so they wouldn't run even if they could. Once your party has defeated the Kuo-toa, they can loot the treasure piled up in this room. There's 48 gold pieces, 360 silver pieces, and 2,000 copper pieces exactly. They also find 3 potions of healing and a mysterious ship in a bottle. They also rescued the little girl, and they can bring her home to collect the reward. So there's some rules and just the bare bones of a short adventure to take a party from 1 to maybe level 3 at most. If you like these rules, please use them and let me know how it goes. Drop a comment down below and I'll definitely read it. If you like the little adventure I outlined, feel free to use as much or as little as you want for your table. As I said before, not everyone enjoys this kind of adventure, so if you're planning on running something like this, I'd give a little pitch about it, kinda like I did. In fact, you can just send this video to your players if you want. I'll put a warning when it comes to the actual adventure, just in case you want to use it. That way they don't get any spoilers. And if you do play the adventure, again, comment, let me know what you added, what you took out, what you changed, and if you liked it. If this video does well, I'd love to make more stuff in the future, so like, comment, and subscribe, you know the drill. Then I'll know that people want that, and then I'll do it. I'd definitely be interested in building more on that little adventure, make it, more fleshed out, longer. Okay, thanks for watching. Goodbye. Each party member must expend twice as many Yeah? Okay.